Hare Krishna. So I'd like to welcome all the attendees. We'd like to invoke auspiciousness to this symposium by chanting Srila Prabhupada's mantra. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we would like to begin the last and final session, the sixth session of Viplavah 2021, the International Education Symposium organized by the Ministry of Education of the GBC body. And we would like to begin this symposium by hearing from His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada.
Everything is now topsy-turvy. There is no regular training of the human being. They are being trained up like cats and dogs. Like cats and dogs, they don't require training. Because what is the modern civilization? Eating, sleeping, sex life and dying. It does not require any education. Just like these children. When I distribute the cookies, it does not require immediately. Spread the hand and immediately in the mouth. So for eating, there is no necessity of training. Everyone knows. Similarly, sleeping also everyone knows. And similarly, sex intercourse everyone knows. And dying there is no question. So where is the education? Where is the necessity of education for these things? Rascals. You are enhancing advancement of knowledge, how to eat, how to sleep, how to have sex life, and how to die. So where is the necessity of education for these things? There is no necessity. Anyone, animal, man, bird, beast, insect, they know all these things. Ahara nidra bhaya maithunancha. It does not require any education. If there is education for this purpose, that is for restraining. Just like in human society, there is education for sex life, marriage. What is that? Marriage. Marriage means restricting sex life to one. That is education. If you are not restricted in that way, then you are an animal. That is education. But because sex life does not require any college education. But if there is education in sex life, not to increase the propensity of sex life, but to reduce it. To reduce it. So, these four things, primary necessities of the living entity, eating, sleeping, mating, it doesn't require any education. If there is education, people may ask then why there is description how to eat, how to sleep, how to have sex life. It is for decreasing. Just like in your country is different, at least in our country it was, just like drinking. Drinking, you can manufacture wine, liquor at home. Anyone can do it. It is not very difficult. In India, the lower class men, the Sautals, see they simply moist some rice overnight and boil it, and then
back to you, Prabhu.
Thank you so much. So, thank you all the attendees. So far, we've covered several topics in different sessions of the symposium. Yesterday was dedicated completely to the expansion of Shastric education. This morning, we had 4 sessions focused on development of consciousness through various levels of consciousness, adolescence, vanaprastha ashram, and also for training for sannyasis and gurus like that. This particular session is dedicated to focusing and encouraging devotees to read Prabhupada's books every day. We have 4 speakers, and the first speaker that I'd like to invite is His Grace Mukunda Ananda Prabhu. Mukunda Anand Prabhu is based in Pune, India. He's a very, very vibrant book distributor and an educator. And we've been working together with Mukunda Anand Prabhu, has helped us put together a very, very important project for the ministry, which will focus on Srila Prabhupada's books. So all of us have different engagements in which we relish our leisure time. The Vaishnavas and ISKCON devotees are expected to relish also in a certain kind of sport. So I invite Mukunda Anand Prabhu to share with us what could be the sport for Vaishnava devotees. Over to you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatare. Thank you for giving this opportunity. It's a really great going conference where we could hear right from philosophy of education, and now we are up to making devotees read Srila Prabhupada books. So we have a certain small endeavor which is going on for last many months, sharing this, and eventually we want to expand this, and this is the blueprint of that particular endeavor, what we call it as sport. So what is sport? Just to clarify, sport stands for Srila Prabhupada Online Reading Terminal. Srila Prabhupada was always very empathetic on reading his books, that follow regulative principles, chant 16 rounds, and read my books very carefully. And then you will go back home, back to Godhead. And in fact, one of the major vision statement that we have at Ministry of Education is that Srila Prabhupada books are the most widely read books across the world. And this is to be achieved through significantly increasing daily reading of Srila Prabhupada books amongst the ISKCON devotees. So many years back, His Holiness Satswarup Das Goswami Maharaj, he wrote a very beautiful book series. One of the book was Reading Reform, and where he had taken interviews of many devotees who were at various levels of their resourcefulness within ISKCON. But one thing was very common, that we as a devotees, we really lacked reading Srila Prabhupada books. So this is a very significant vision and mission statement that Ministry of Education has, because we devotees, we have taken vows to chant the holy names, and come what may, we complete our rounds. We try our best to chant in the morning, if not in the afternoon, if not, we finish till 12 o'clock in the night. I remember a few days in my many years where, we have just racing with the watch and completing the 16th round because the day was very hectic. But because no such vow per se we have taken for reading, so reading generally lags. And that's why we have, and forget we, even I see in my own life, without having a particular sankalpa to read Srila Prabhupada books, weeks go by, months go by, and we are without reading Srila Prabhupada books. And then what happens without reading Srila Prabhupada books is, as His Grace Tapan Mishra Prabhu says it very nicely, spiritual becomes ritual. So SPI, Srila Prabhupada instructions, when we remove, which are coming from the books directly, the spiritual aspect of our devotional service, the spirituality, the spiritual simply becomes ritual because we remove SPI. So what is this sport project? And we are accompanying this sport project. We also have something which is to create the sport, this particular sport, I mean the book reading to the devotees, very rewarding to the devotees themselves. And this is a hand holding book reading. So we want to have, in the due course of time, many devotees, many circles across the globe, across the languages, and to create some support material as well for these devotees who are the facilitators of this reading circle. So SPORT stands for Srila Prabhupada Online Reading Terminal, SPORT. So what is sport? The sport is simply, it's a facilitator-led hand-holding, reading of Srila Prabhupada's books every day. So daily at a fixed time, on a Zoom or on a Google Meet online, we assemble. So O is for online here. And we read daily Srila Prabhupada's books for 20 minutes. And why 20 minutes? 20 minutes is because nobody thinks twice before spending 20 minutes as such. Even if somebody has his rounds remaining, or some other pressing things they are there, 20 minutes is something which we can always go on and spare. In fact, whenever some devotee meets and they have a concern about their book reading, I just ask them that, of course with due humility, I ask them that, are you sure you have never vested your 20 minutes in WhatsApp, Facebook, or Insta, so on and so forth? And practically, everybody has 20 minutes. So what we do every day 20 minutes reading of Srila Prabhupada books. And we have this nice 20-20 formula. Till now we have covered 20 books of Srila Prabhupada in last 20 months, just reading 20 minutes a day. So we begin 7:10 in the morning, Indian Standard Time, IST, 7:10 till 7:30, and in this 20 minutes we read. This is typically a very reading session. Reading means it is 80% reading, and 20% we have some discussion, just to facilitate the kind of reading that Srila Prabhupada, the message that Srila Prabhupada wants to give. And the discussion per se is also centered around the books of Srila Prabhupada and purports of Srila Prabhupada. So it is all the cross-referencing is within the books of Srila Prabhupada. So the entire endeavor remains very direct and extremely pure, without any even the slightest deviation from the Srila Prabhupada's books. We cover around 3 to 4 pages per day in this way, in 20 minutes. With a normal pace of reading, where multiple participants join. The study circle that I conduct every day, almost there are 30 devotees they are joining. So we read couple of paragraphs, have couple of minutes of discussion on that, and then again go ahead, read further. And we plan to cover almost 3 pages per day, and we continue this without any break, because we know that bhakti has to be apratihata, and any breaks. So we have absolutely no break, no single day break, because once you break, break breaks. So this is in a nutshell what the sport project is all about. So here you see the 2 ladders. So this picture is very familiar, the hare and the tortoise. So but here you see another this thing. When we make small incremental steps every day, we can reach to our destination very fast. I remember my own reading schedule. I used to plan that I will sit and read, and I used to sit and read for 3 hours, and you feel so much nourished, so satisfied, and unconsciously we feel that my need of Srila Prabhupada's books reading is now taken care, and we take that Bhagavatam, put it to our head and keep it in the bookshelf, next to open it only when we are exhausted and in the need of Srila Prabhupada's books. So what happens is the average reading across the month becomes very less. The couple spurts of 3 hours of reading just ends up with 6 or 7 hours of reading per month. But when we make very small sankalpa, we will read a very small insignificant amount, which is in itself 20 minutes. But when we do it every day, what happens is that it builds up, and the compounding effect that takes place, that creates wonder in the due course of time. So here you see, somebody who is trying to climb a ladder which having the larger step size, and he is just struggling with the first step. Where somebody with a very, very small steps, very incremental steps, he has just gone up reading every day 20 minutes, 20 minutes, 20 minutes. And when we tell this to devotees that we have read 20 books in last 20 months, and this includes some of the big books like Teachings of Queen Kunti, Teachings of Lord Kapila, the Science of Self-Realization, Srila Prabhupada Lilamrit, 1 volume Lilamrit, 450 pages. So those kind of books, along with Nectar of Instruction, Ishopanishad, these kind of books. And the devotees, they are really wonderstruck that, you have read, all of you have read 20 books in last 20 months. So the necessity of having small incremental steps, and that's why we have kept it 20 minutes. So why the long form, why the short form sport? We just want to give a devotees feeling that it's easy. I mean, everybody is looking forward sport. It's fun. Why fun? Because when we read Srila Prabhupada's books every day, and especially when there is a handhold reading, somebody who is into Srila Prabhupada's books for many years, and when he explains what Srila Prabhupada wants to precisely, convey in this, we have new realizations every day. So it's easy, it's fun, and just like the ordinary sport will build the bodily muscles, reading every day will build our spiritual muscles. And that's why we see that everyone is looking forward the sport whenever they join. And we have a very low attrition, means devotees joining and not leaving without any compulsion, without any even the attendance that we take. Of course, in the due course of time, we are planning to give the certificates, reading completions, some awards that we want to give them, the recognition in the form of certificates. But as of now, we have a very good participation because everybody feels spiritually nourished by daily associating with Srila Prabhupada. So that's how it is continuing. So the due course of time, we want to have this sport reading or a daily reading of Srila Prabhupada's books to be more rewarding. We want to assist the readers with a kind of a MCQs available. So we started with the MCQ marathon some time back, and there we are creating MCQs for all small books of Srila Prabhupada. You take Ishopanishad and we will have MCQ. The Science of Self-Realization, or Teachings of Queen Kunti, Teachings of Lord Kapila. So we are working on these books in different phases. And also we want to create some support material. What is the support material? That means a particular paragraph that Srila Prabhupada takes. And when he reads that paragraph, when we read that paragraph, the facilitator will be having something to refer to, that what exactly, what was the theme of the paragraph, what are the examples, that additional examples can be given, some of the shlokas that can be quoted from the Bhagavatam or Chaitanya Charitamrita or Bhagavad Gita, so on and so forth. So the readers will have MCQs to check their understanding of Srila Prabhupada's books, and they will have this, and the facilitators will have the support material, so that when they conduct discussion, that discussion also becomes very, very fruitful, and it goes. And we want to make this availability of this MCQ material and the support material through web and app. Also, we want to make this book reading internally and externally rewarding. So internally rewarding because there is a nourishment by daily reading Srila Prabhupada books, and external reward, we want to come up with certificates of participation and even the kind of appreciation, and the certificates they can share on the social media, so on and so forth. We want to create the awareness amongst the ISKCON temple presidents and the leaders. So when in the due course of time, we want these books to be read everywhere. Of course, when we say something across ISKCON, it will have its own its own set of the concerns. So that some concerns we have identified, and we want to identify and train the sport facilitators in conducting daily book reading circles. Attitude training for the sport facilitator, because the sport facilitator, his only gain is he's going to read Srila Prabhupada books every day, and that itself is a huge gain. At the same time, he has to be very, very selfless, because the world is becoming more and more online, and with the online world there are some the online problems also that we will come to later. Established sport circles, that means reading circles across various languages and the various time zones. So this is one of the larger vision. And then we want to have to make resources available online and in multiple languages to the facilitators, and attract devotees and others to the sport project by the social media outreach. So these are our broad vision points that we have. What progress we have made so far? For MCQs, that is multiple choice questions, we have identified books for which books we will go ahead with the MCQs. So book identification was a very important step, because some of the books that BBT has published, in the due course of time, they are out of publication and out of circulation. Like there is a book called as Rescuing Sita, or there are a couple of books. So we have to identify books for this, that we have done. Identified teams for creating the MCQ. We have set up the procedures and the processes with the desired outcome, what exactly we want. So we decided that we will go, the MCQ will be in a sequence. That means when we are reading a book, the MCQs will appear as the content in the book flows, the MCQs will appear in the same sequence. Also, additionally, whenever there is a theme change within the given chapter, it will, the MCQ is, the question is supposed to capture that particular theme being discussed, and then they will have a very interesting question. So we, we had this set various processes and the procedures, and we have a very clearly defined outcome for this, the having the MCQ projects. And we have identified the key resources for making the MCQs. There are senior devotees who are editing these MCQs, who are very well read. Then there is a moderation step. Then there is, of course, the formatting and follow-up. And then we want to go ahead with web and app development. So in the due course of time, we want to have devotees coming to the website, registering themselves, and participating in this kind of activity. And then we will also have Android and the iOS apps. And finally, the social media outreach. So we have identified the key resources. MCQs have been started. We have completed a few books there. A few books are there in different stages of editing, moderation, formatting, so on and so forth. Web and app development, we have just started. So this is the progress so far. This is the broad timeline we want to have it. So starting from Srila Prabhupada's 125th appearance day, which is just coming. Every Ekadashi we want to come out with one book. And for other works, we are planning to complete it in next 2 years' time. That is developing website and app. Then, the awareness and the expansions, the facilitators identification, the training of the facilitators, and then finally a multilingual study circle in various languages. We want to have these study circles in the due course of time. So this overall project is supposed to take somewhere between 2 to 4 years. Let us see how it unfolds. So these are the internal rewards of reading book every day, right? So book reading every day will give great nourishment and satisfaction. In fact, Bhagavad Gita says one who reads Bhagavad Gita every day, he is himself worshipping the Supreme Lord with his intelligence. So when we are reading the spiritual books, we are satisfying Srila Prabhupada, and that itself, Yasya Prasadat Bhagavat Prasado, that leads to satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. So these are the internal rewards. We also want to have the external rewards, like on the app that we go to have. Devotees can make sankalpa about how much they want to read. There can be a fixed time where they will be reminded your reading time has come. We want to award certificates to those who have completed, who have participated in the reading circles and completed, a particular book. We say that so and so devotee has completed, this particular book, say teachings of Queen Kunti, between this date to this date, and the reading was led by facilitator this, and it will have a nice seal, a QR code, it can be identified, so on and so forth. So devotees will have a sense of satisfaction, a sense of accomplishment. They will look forward what they want to do, how they want to unfold their reading of Srila Prabhupada's books in the due course of time. So these are the internal and the external rewards. Another part of this project is a website and app development. So we want to create a facility where there will be a quick registration, and the MCQs will be a drop down. I mean, you register at the app and you select the book, and then the MCQs will start flowing across the book, and it will be a very easy quiz taking. There will be a book progress bar, chapter progress bar. Say we have this particular book, say Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, and there are 43 chapters. It is one of the big books, the major works. So then it will say, what is the progress of you, the particular devotee who is using the app for the book, and for the chapter also, given chapter as well. So there will be progress bars which are available. Daily reading reminder alarm. So the app will also have a kind of alarm which will signal that it's your time now for reading or joining sports circle, reading now. Notification alarm in case there are any absent days. Alert to your caretaker. Of course, it's very optional, but you can always say that, Prabhuji, if I am not coming for reading or something like that, you can always talk to my my temple president, this or that, and it's optional, but that also can be implemented. And then we want to have the completion certificate after reading each book. So when devotee completes a reading of that particular book, he will complete the MCQ test. MCQ will be a easy, fun. It is not to check the intellectual the ability kind of a thing. It just wants to check the assimilation of the message. So it will not going to be excessively academic that people will stay away from it. It will be supporting in such a way that the people in general, they will look forward this kind of taking the MCQ. And then there will be a facility to share and publish their certificate on the social media, LinkedIn, so on and so forth. So they can share their certificate there. And so this is what the website and app development. The next step of the project is create awareness across the temples. So we have to conduct these programs, convey and discuss the project vision, how this is going to benefit the congregation, how the congregation will be spirited. I am from Pune. So in Pune, we have His Grace Radhesham Prabhu, and we have discussed this vision very elaborately. And we are going to launch this, the sport forum in Pune very soon, all across to all the congregation. And we want to ensure the leaders that the sport, the initiative reading will maintain the purity of the message, because we always refer Prabhupada, and even the cross references are all across Prabhupada books. So sometimes what happens is, as a devotees, many times some devotees may read something else, and the Gigo principle, good in, good out. And otherwise also, what happens is that whatever we read, whatever we assimilate, generally we end up speaking as well. But here in reading, we want to say that this is Srila Prabhupada online terminus. So the entire message will be from Srila Prabhupada books. And mind you, there is enough ecstasy, enough nectar, enough new information there in Srila Prabhupada books that we have hardly accessed. And these are spiritual books. More we read, more they are going to be revealed. Also, we want to assure the leaders that they will be preserving their key resources. I will come to this in a minute, what this exactly means. And the strengthening of spiritual practices for the congregation. So reading itself will strengthen the spiritual practice for the congregation.
Mukunda Anand Prabhu, Hare Krishna. Prabhu,
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
we'll have to bring.
Yes, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, I started at 5:40.
Is it?
Yeah, 5:39. I was about to ask you when you switched on your camera. I thought that's a warning.
Sorry, I thought we started on time at 5:36 or 37.
Yeah, okay. I'll just complete in a couple of minutes, Prabhuji. So we want to identify and train the sport facilitators. So they will be facilitators for the multiple languages. We have to train them in the attitude, the techniques, and the content. There will be regular meetings and feedback with the sport facilitator. Inspire these facilitators with some special favors, of course, non-monetary special favors, like something like special blessings of Maharajas and something like that, and rewarding them at the annual ISKCON meets, that such and such devotee is instrumental in making these many devotees read Srila Prabhupada books. So this is something. And then there is a skill training for the facilitators that we will not go through. Basically, what it means is this has to be done as a selfless service. So it's a reading session, and it should go on for 365 days a year, because there is no break. And it should become 20 minutes should remain a 20-minute. It should not become 21 or 22. Reading should remain a reading. It should not become a class that, that suddenly the devotee becomes so inspired to speak that it becomes a, the class, ISKCON class, then, Bhagavatam class kind of thing. Then reading should remain a reading. The discussion should be within Srila Prabhupada books and purports, or circular referencing will be within ISKCON, and maintain a high level of purity and chastity to the message of Srila Prabhupada. And then there is an attitude training that, because the world is turning more and more online, there are no boundaries for participation. We have certain programs which are conducted by Punjabi Bagh temple, just for example, and there are participation from Africa or America. We have Pune temple conducting, and some Uganda and some. So there are no boundaries. So we will ensure that the sport facilitator will always remain neutral in his message. He will not promote any particular location or guidance or mentoring, counseling, promote. These things will not happen. And that is what we are calling it as attitude training to the facilitators. Eventually, we want to have this as multilingual sport circles. Initially, to begin with English, Hindi, Bengali, and Russian. And in the due course of time, we hope that anybody who wants to read Srila Prabhupada books, there is a facility available. There is a hand-holding reading available that they can read very nicely. So this is what the long-term vision is. That's what we are starting. Going ahead with social media awareness, and we need your prayers and blessings that we complete this very ambitious and very, very important task that we want to have. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Mukundanand Prabhu. I must say that this is, for the Ministry of Education at this point in time, one of the most important projects that are being undertaken. So much energy and effort is needed. And I'm grateful to Mukundanand Prabhu and the team for helping us out. Two questions. First question, Mukundanand Prabhu. Have you considered including a podcast for the readings? Although less interactive, it might allow greater number of participants and even a funding stream to help expansion.
Yeah, it's a very good input. Very good input. Yes.
Thank you. And one thing that I did want to share with devotees was that please bear in mind that once we make these resources available, and I'll take the liberty to share that we have identified close to 19,000 paragraphs in the small books that we're currently working on. So yesterday, we spent a lot of time talking to you about Shastric education, the Bhakti Shastri program, Bhakti Viplavah program, studying Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, the 4 Bhakti Shastri books, Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita. But we are doing a two-way approach. One is for the Shastric examinations for the big books, and then also bottom up from the small books. And once these resources are created, they will be shared with educators, preachers, and many can do wonders with it. To give you an example, I like to share something, if I can. Yeah, I'll share something with you from one of the participants here right now. And this was prepared as a resource, and I hope you can see it. And you will see here that Shyam Gopal Prabhu, who is present here also, he went ahead and prepared this resource where we bring the book to life, not only with the words, but we give a context, we give a history, the various versions of the book, when it came into being, what was the background, some preface and photographs of the times when it was set, 1972. The author's conversation, Srila Prabhupada's conversation with Bob Kohena, Brahmatirtha Prabhu, so on and so forth. And you'll see here that paragraphs are taken, questions are created, and then you can even create a pedagogy around it. Preachers, teachers can use it. They can use it in their communities, take small books and create educational programs. So much can be achieved by just doing that. So if you feel inspired for this project, please do contact us. We are going to share later in my presentation how you can be in touch with us for this Books Are the Basis initiative. So Mukundanand Prabhu, thank you so much for taking on this project and also sharing with us
Thank you.
and with all the audience what has been undertaken. The 2 to 4 years, we hope, will be squeezed in 2 or less years. And I'm Mukundanand Prabhu. The next speaker I want to invite is a personality who has, year after year, inspired one and many to engage in distributing and reading Srila Prabhupada's books incessantly. His Grace Vaisheshika Prabhu. Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances.
Hare Krishna, Tapanamisha Prabhu. My obeisances to you and all the devotees here.
Thank you, Prabhu, for joining us. So Vaisheshika Prabhu is going to speak to us on this very important topics of reading Srila Prabhupada's books and the magic it can create in communities. And this whole contradiction that a lot of times managers think that, are we just going to let our community members read books? What about services? Prabhu has led a transformation and encouraged many communities around the world to distribute and read. So I invite Vaisheshika Prabhu.
I offer my respectful obeisances to His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, and to all the assembled devotees today. Hare Krishna. Yes, Tapanamisha Prabhu, about building community. It's so essential for survival of the human spirit, because no human being can live independently. We have to have exchange, human exchange with others. Therefore, I saw during the pandemic that as soon as people came out of being locked down, they wanted to go back to the restaurants and eat together, drink together, go to movies, talk, get into groups. But they have nothing to talk about that's progressive as far as the human spirit goes. They just talk about politics and sports and so forth. So in the same way, when somebody comes to Krishna consciousness, he or she needs to have community to survive. Unless we have a support system and a realization about Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead and a way to assimilate it, then it's not possible for us to stay in a position of liberation. Ariya Krishnena Paramparam Tata. Whatever imagined type of liberation we gain will be quickly diminished and lost. So in ISKCON, in Vaishnav society, community, which comes from a word that means the word common. What's common amongst us is a good question to ask. What is it that binds us together? What's our common interest? And one of the main answers is the sound of Srila Prabhupada's voice. And that sound, of course, we hear through his lectures. And when we have the written word, it's an abstraction of the spoken voice. And we have Srila Prabhupada's voice captured in his books. And it's different from anybody else's voice. It's unique and special. It's what makes those who are specifically dedicated to Srila Prabhupada as the founder Acharya unique, is their love for that unique sound of his voice and the specific instructions that he gives. So Srila Prabhupada had recommended many times that in order to take advantage of his association, we should read his books. There's a quote that I'd like to bring in from the Srimad Bhagavatam 10:13-54. As you all know, that's the last chapter that he translated or commentated upon in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And he says the following in a purport. In that purport, 10:13-54, we should discuss Srimad Bhagavatam daily as much as possible. And then everything will be clarified. For Bhagavatam is the essence of all Vedic literature. Nigama kalpataror kalitam palam. It was written by Vyasadeva, Mahamuni Krite, when he was self-realized. Thus, the more we read Srimad Bhagavatam, the more its knowledge becomes clear. Each and every verse is transcendental. So this is a clue to how to have community. To be in common is to hear Srila Prabhupada's voice and to discuss amongst us the Srimad Bhagavatam. I have a little testing ground here for community because we started from scratch. Here at scratch means we started fresh. It's a new community here at ISKCON of Silicon Valley. The principles I've seen applied elsewhere are equally as effective. But our community at ISV, in which we've had a modicum of success, has been founded around the principle that although people may be very busy, and in our community, everybody works, maintains families and so forth, and therefore it's not that they can be front and center all the time. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had given 5 processes that are so powerful, he said, that even if one has a little contact with them, he said the power of these 5 principles is very wonderful and difficult to understand. Even without faith in them, a person who is offenseless can awaken his dormant love of Krishna simply by being a little connected with them. So a community can be built. We can build communities by making sure that the members, how many there are connected with these 5 principles. And among them are hearing Srimad Bhagavatam and associating with devotees. So if you take these 2, and of course, all of them are important, chanting the holy name, worshiping the deity, residing in a holy place like Mathura, together in these 5, even with a little contact with them, the members of the community will be successful. And so that's one piece of advice that comes directly from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is that don't become overwhelmed if you're building a community. Just make sure that everyone has contact with these 5, and even if it's a little bit, a slight connection, they will be able to progress in devotional service. And nothing succeeds like success. The members of the community have to feel that they're making advancement, that they're getting something, and that's when the community actually has cohesion. One of the other suggestions by our acharyas, as far as community goes, is given by Rupa Goswami in the Videshamrita, where he says, Kuyamakyati prashiti. And that is that we have to take time to sit and discuss with one another the tenets of devotional service. In a purport in the Adi Lila, 1st chapter, in which Kaviraj Goswami quotes the Bhagavad Gita 10:10, Tesham Satata Yuktanam. Srila Prabhupada's purport, he says that devotees are like scientists who sit together and discuss the conclusions of their research papers. And so this is one of the important devotional activities. Siddhanta Bolya Chitanakara Alash Ihahite Krishna Lage Sudrid Manosh. In order to have Sudrid Manosh, a very strong mind, and determination for devotional service, one has to have siddhanta. And this comes about through discussion, hearing and then discussing. And so one of the common points of building community is giving time for the devotees to sit together to hear Srila Prabhupada's books and then to discuss. As Prabhupada says, thoroughly threadbare, you should discuss from many points of seeing, he writes. So I noticed this at my home. For 13 years, we had programs where devotees would come and we just have a few hours to hear and then discuss. And devotees would bring their concerns, their anxieties from the world, and they would discuss among themselves by reading Srila Prabhupada's books and then taking the points and applying them to their life. And I saw that there are bonds that grow between the devotees when they realize their common anxieties and problems in life, and that there are solutions they can achieve together by following the tenets given in Srila Prabhupada's books. This is the essence of the community building, is that discussion. Now, what about distribution? I like to compare the reading of Srila Prabhupada's books and the distribution of them to the process of breathing. Breathing, according to the definition of breathing in Wikipedia, breathing is central to life. It allows the human body to obtain the energy it needs to sustain itself and its activities. So in this metaphor of breathing, we carry it over to the process of community building within ISKCON. And the breathing takes place, there's an exchange of gases that takes place in breathing. We bring in oxygen, which comes to us from the plants, green plants. And then we exhale carbon dioxide, which is a waste product. So when devotees go out together to distribute books, we frame it as a process of breathing or of purification, as you're taking your anxieties. The main anxiety in life, or for devotee, is like, does this process actually work? So many people ask, I'm chanting, but am I getting a taste? Am I actually making advancement? And when devotees go out together to distribute Srila Prabhupada's books, first of all, they have to depend on Krishna and chant, Hare Krishna, please help me. And second of all, they meet people and see the dire need that people have for Krishna consciousness. And they also see how eager they are for it. Sometimes, and oftentimes, they see how blatantly unconcerned people are about the goal of life. And that's also a point of realization. But what happens is when devotees go out to distribute Srila Prabhupada's books, they take out all their problems, whatever anxieties they have, whatever doubts they have, and they get diminished into the atmosphere as they're distributing books. And then they have experiences where they meet people who are eager to take the books. They also see how Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is directing their activities when they're working as instruments in his service. And they bring that realization, which is oxygen, back into the community. And the way that gets processed, just as when we breathe, the oxygen has to have an exchange within the cells in order to be effective. It is through sitting together and discussing the observations that the devotees are having in the context of Srila Prabhupada's books. And so this completes the breathing process. You have to go out, that is the exhale, and then you have to come back in and you have to process it through the reading and discussion of Srila Prabhupada's books. As I'm speaking here, I noticed that there's a chat box. If you have any comment, you can light up the chat box. And Tapana Mishra Prabhu, you can also inform me how many more minutes I have left too, please.
We have 7 minutes, and if there are no questions, we can go on for 10 minutes. So I'm hopeful that devotees will publish their questions in the Q&A box. Please do send them in.
Okay, yeah, better sooner than later. 7 minutes goes by pretty fast, especially the way I take up oxygen in the room. Okay, so Um, community means common. The sound of Prabhupada's voice is the common principle around which we cohese. And the breathing process is to go out, distribute Srila Prabhupada's books, come back in and discuss our realizations. And in that way, we form a nucleus or a process that is sustaining in an organization. And it's simple, but it's extremely profound. So I've noticed that when we make time for devotees to sit and hear and chant together, then everybody in the community starts to get accustomed to that process. If the classes get a little longer, then the devotees start getting accustomed to having longer classes where they can sit and discuss. If you have very short classes, that's what they'll get used to. It's just like anything, like if you exercise and you're used to walking for 5 minutes, if you start walking for 7, then your body will have to adapt. So similarly, when you have longer classes and more time for hearing and chanting, then devotees just adapt to that, and that becomes their sustaining force in life. What do I mean by sustaining? Prabhupada writes this in the Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila. Men become strong and stout. This is the verse first by Kaviraj Goswami, by eating sufficient grains. But the devotee who simply eats ordinary grains but does not taste the transcendental pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Krishna gradually becomes weak and falls down from the transcendental position. However, if one drinks but a drop of the nectar of Krishna's pastimes, his body and mind begin to bloom, and he begins to laugh, sing, and dance. Purport. It's short. All the devotees connected with the Krishna consciousness movement must read all the books that have been translated, the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and others. Otherwise, after some time, they will simply eat, sleep, and fall down from their position. Thus, they will miss the opportunity to attain the eternal blissful life of transcendental pleasure. Let's see, Prema and Premi. Hey, Haribol, good to hear from you. Thanks for following over here. So wonderful point about oxygen. Thanks so much. Hare Krishna. And how do you discuss Prabhupada's books? Is it reading one whole chapter? Well, we chant chapters. One thing is with the youth hold together community. The children have to have a taste. Otherwise, it's really hard for the parents. And if the children have a taste, they bring the parents in. So if you have a community, which generally means that you have various aspects of the Varnashram system, and mostly nowadays they're grihastas, except in Pune and a few other places. That's the mainstay. So the kids, we have to take care of the kids in a community. So one thing is kids can learn really quickly, and if you introduce the chanting of verses, that's one thing. Long strings of verses, sit for hours or at least half hour, and learn all the verses. Learn the 34 verses in the Divinity and Divine Service. That's the first canto, second chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Learn the Sri Upanishad, learn the Upadeshamrita, learn the Bhagavad Gita, learn the Brahma Samhita. All those verses should be known by heart by all the kids and parents. And it's not hard. It's just a matter of integrating it into the system. It becomes the life breath of the community. When everyone learns to chant all these verses together and starts to know them and taste them, then they relish it again and again. And then, let's see, your question is by reading one whole chapter. There are various ways to read. You can read one whole chapter. Prabhu before me was talking about reading for 20 minutes. Excellent advice. Also, referencing when you're reading, you find some interesting point and you reference it to from it in another book. For instance, you find Prabhupada talking about a particular point in a purport, then you can pull that book out and read it too. And you get a holistic approach to discussing the philosophy. The main point is exposure. There's no particular way that you have to read. You can read for volume, you can read for depth, but the main point is to be exposed, have the books open. When you pull a book off the shelf, it shouldn't make that cracking sound that a brand new book makes. They should be well worn and marked and read many, many times. That's a sign of a good, of a healthy community. How to be motivated to distribute books? As someone doesn't buy for a long time, we lose our hope. Motivation comes through community. If you have community goal and everyone works together and everything counts, then book distribution is not onerous at all. And also to keep in mind that our goal isn't necessarily to distribute a book. We're just going out for our own self-purification. And there's plenty of that. And also, most people won't take a book. So don't make that the standard of your success. Make the standard of your success purification. And if you're in that position, also just try to make friends with people. Can you please share an experience? Tapan, I'm done. Thank you very much.
No, we have few more questions on the Q&A box, which I wanted to request you. One is a devotee, Shivas Pandit Prabhu, is asking, can we assess what's the current level of advancement in our community and gauge the spiritual progress? So how do we gauge the spiritual progress of the community?
Well, one standard Jiva Goswami points out in his Sandarbha is that there's a direct correlation for how much taste one has for hearing and chanting with one's advancement in Krishna consciousness. So one of the ways, there are many, but one of the ways to judge, to gauge, is to see how eager devotees are, that is young and old, to sit and listen. Are they enthralled by hearing and discussing the philosophy of Krishna consciousness? If so, you have health in your community.
Thank you. Next question. Can you please share an experience of how reading daily enhanced one's spiritual life? Any experience to motivate one's reading daily without fail?
Well, I could tell my own. I'm always full of anxiety because of the conditions of life. Because, in working in multiple projects at the same time, my brain's always got a cognitive load that's hard to carry. And, I'll wake up in the middle of the night, think, what am I going to do about this or that? But when I'm not processing it through reading Srila Prabhupada's books, or let me put it in the positive, when I am reading my prescribed number of pages every day, as Prabhu before me recommended, read a prescribed number of pages, just as you chant a prescribed number of rounds. When I do that, when I'm completely on track, like my goal is 41 pages of Bhagavatam a day, because that means I finish the whole Bhagavatam within 1 year, then the cognitive load becomes mitigated. And I have a higher perspective. So I know it in my own life, I can't survive without Srila Prabhupada's books. And I'll just give this one example and then finish with this. And that is that don't shop when you're hungry. This is an old admonition that if you go shopping when you're hungry, you'll pick up all kinds of things you don't need. So similarly, don't go out and face the world without being fully satisfied by reading something from Srila Prabhupada's books. If you feel satisfied, if you have the right perspective, then when you go out into the world and you're dealing with people and circumstances that seem intractable, you'll be able to handle it. Plus, you won't be attracted to the non-permanent. You'll be able to stay within the confines and safety of Srila Prabhupada's and Lord Krishna's lotus feet. Thanks, Tapana Mishra Prabhu, for your tireless efforts to organize everyone in various interesting ways and productive ways. And thanks to all of you for listening in for a few minutes. It meant a lot to me. Hare Krishna.
Well, you've been an inspiration for all of us, Prabhu, and practically everybody here will concur with me. And last year, Vaisheshika Prabhu was very kind in preparing this very special production, which is still on there on the ministry website, I encourage everybody to go back and see that. It's called Be a Sage, page by page. You can also use the application that's available, but you must see that production, which really inspired many devotees, and that's available on a YouTube channel. And coming Bhadra Purnima, like last year, I encourage all educators to step out of your role as an educator and go out there, as Prabhu just described, breathe, go out there, help with the distribution of Srimad Bhagavatam, help distribute and read every single day. Thank you, Vaisheshika Prabhu. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. And so now, typically in the 3 days of symposium, we wanted the symposium to be more about you and very, very less about the ministry. But I do have to, on behalf of the ministry, I must share with you what we're undertaking. And the title of the next talk is just that, which is books are the basis. So let me know if you're able to see the slide in a, let me just go back, make sure I start from the beginning. Is the slide visible now?
Yes, Prabhuji. You can see. You
Thank
need to
you.
make it the presentation mode, so that would be good.
Okay, that's what I just did. And I must be honest, I really don't know how to do better than that at this point in time. Could somebody please suggest what I must do? Display
Did you do?
setting?
Yeah, you can put F5 also if you are using the. Yes, it is coming up, but I think you need to share those presentation mode. We are seeing the double one.
Okay, so F5 did not work. Let me do this. Let me make it simpler and just do it without the presentation mode. So here we go. Books are the basis, and if it is inconvenient for, and it's not coming as big as it should, I apologize in advance, but let's, in the interest of time, let me try to get this on. Okay, so the motto of the ministry is books are the basis. And I heard yesterday from one of the speakers in the session who was very good in technology, and he said it was quite a blow for the false ego when the technology did not work. And honestly, although I don't claim much expertise with technology, but I am facing a similar crisis right now. So a very quick historical perspective, having lost 3 minutes already of my allotted time. The Ministry of Education was established by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada himself in 1975. 2 years after incorporating ISKCON, Srila Prabhupada encouraged his disciples to establish schools. And if you like to know more about the history, we had a presentation in the ILS called Passing the Torch of Knowledge, where historical context and paper was presented on how education has evolved within ISKCON over the last 50 years. ISKCON is essentially an education movement. So Prabhupada said, so this Krishna consciousness movement is educational movement. It is not a religious sentiment, it is a science. So if you want to know through science and philosophy, we have got our books. You can read, and even if you read the complete set, it will take you your whole life to finish it. If you're setting out in an effort to establish a mission or a ministry, it's very important for us to have a goal. And the goal of education, as described by Srila Prabhupada, is our eternal relationship with God can be revived in the human form of life. And that should be the goal of education. Indeed, that is the perfection of life and the perfection of education. The Ministry of Education's goal comes from Srila Prabhupada's instruction. And our objective for the next 4 years more is just this, which is to ensure that Srila Prabhupada's books are read every day by ISKCON devotees, leaders, educators, preachers, and members alike. And it should become the primary source, which is Srila Prabhupada's book should become the primary source for all the educational activities within ISKCON. To implement policies, design systems, and facilitate programs that make the above possible is what we like to do at this ministry. There are certain founding principles of this ministry that we abide by and would like to follow. First of all, we would like to be driven by our primary objective, which I shared just now, which is to ensure that all educational programs are based upon Srila Prabhupada's books. Our ministry would like to be a transparent ministry, which communicates and makes available to the members of ISKCON all the projects that we are undertaking. We want to adopt best practices that there may be, and without hesitation, if there is anything in the outside world that can be utilized to progress the cause of the ministry, we shall take that up, provided it falls within the Vaishnava paradigm. We want to create a culture of accountability ourselves, work around timelines, offer projects which can be delivered on time, and likewise, also expect the same sense of accountability from the educators and teachers who are working with the ministry or get involved with the ministry and within the overall framework of ISKCON's education system. We would, in the coming years, also be reviewing our structure and staffing. We have some departments which have been existing for some time, and we're going to review that. We are going to create more departments and structure that will help pursue our objective. We want to ensure universalization. We want to ensure universalization in the sense of equal opportunity and access to educational programs to all devotees, irrespective of which country, which language, whether they're temple or congregation, irrespective of that. And in undertaking this effort, we also want to make sure that we draw our boundaries. We clearly declare what we can do or not. So what we can do is what was above, what we are unable to do, but we shall definitely cooperate with and like to communicate is ensure the safety of our children across the various institutions, which is being undertaken by the Child Protection Office. So if we ever come across something, immediately inform them. And also to ensure that there is the leadership here. If we notice there is abuse of power or leadership misconduct, that is also reported to the office of the GBC body, which is now undertaking policies around this. From the year 2020 to 2022, here are some of the projects that the ministry is actively working on. The format in which I have presented this, and it should have, if it was a presentation mode, you would not be overwhelmed with all the text, it would have gone one by one. But the format is the following. The first part of every sentence says what the project is. The second part in the bracket, we give the timeline or when the project is happening. If it's an event, the timeline of a primary participant or a member from who on the behalf of the ministry is undertaking that project. So the first one is the annual International Shravanam Week, much like the ISKCON's Global Body Commissioners, GBC body, from 2020 took a resolution that every year 1 week would be celebrated, dedicated for reading Srila Prabhupada's books, on encouraging leaders to talk about, give seminars, and encourage their communities to read Srila Prabhupada's books. This project, we are helped greatly by Krishna Prema Rupa Prabhu. We have timed it in such a way that it follows this most inspirational effort by Vaisheshika Prabhu in the form of Bhadra Purnima, by the BBT marketing team as well, where devotees are encouraged to distribute and then also study Srimad Bhagavatam. So this year is going to happen around the 20th and 21st of September. Right after that, we'll have the annual International Shravanam Week, encouraging devotees to read Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, Chaitanya Charitamrita, and all of Srila Prabhupada's books every single day. The next project, which was presented earlier in the session, was Srila Prabhupada Online Leading Terminal. This would be the ministry's 125th anniversary offering to His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada, and Mukundanand Prabhu spoke about the project today. Once we have created these resources, we would also be preparing courses and certification on small books. His Grace Sankirtan Prabhu is helping us with this project and leading this project for us on behalf of the ministry. We are also working with a very inspired devotee, Upananda Prabhu, who is helping us. And together with the ministry, we're going to build a mobile app focused on books are the basis. Essentially, that mobile app, we are now seeking a license from the BBT to give electronic access to the content of Srila Prabhupada's books, especially the small books and the Bhagavad Gita. And with the likes of Leela Purushottam Prabhu, who you heard from this morning, who's carrying out Live Gita, Learn Gita, Live Gita project, we are going to create a platform which will allow devotees to read the books on these apps, along with that, undertake the quizzes that we just talked about. You to create small groups, mentors will be assigned, a online and offline sangha, which can be easily created by the press of few buttons. And devotees and new people who start coming through, let's say, the Gita program or small books program, can then gradually be encouraged to read other books of Srila Prabhupada. So this is going to be delivered in the next 1 quarter. We are ready with the full digitization of certificates. You'll be happy to know that very soon, all of teacher certifications that are awarded within ISKCON, all of Shastric education certificates that are awarded within ISKCON, like the Bhakti Shastri, Bhakti Vaibhav, Bhakti Vedanta, Bhakti Sarvabhauma, may there be many, from praying to Mahaprabhu from Sridhar Mayapur. These will all be awarded electronically, as in you will receive these digitally. You can print them at your local locations. If you ever lose them, you just keep the unique number of the certificate, and you can always download it or reprint it in the future at any point in time. So this will be delivered in this month. We are working on a very, very aspirational project, which is the Mayapur University project. We hope to lay the foundation stone by March 2022 in Sridham Mayapur, where Srila Prabhupada wanted this university for the world to be established. And we're working with His Grace Gauranga Prabhu and his team on this project. Pranava Prabhu, who's on this, in the participants today, is also a cornerstone behind this project. You heard from Atul Krishna Prabhu yesterday about the study and teach program. A pilot is going on right now in South India, and many more devotees are encouraged to participate, especially leaders in this. And also devotees are requested to volunteer for this. There's also revision of Shastric examination in terms of how centers applications are done, and this examination assessment, which has been done with the Board of Examination team of the ministry. We are now in the process of also establishing a council/board of teachers, which I expect to be done within the next 30 days. And last but not the least, an online training for curriculum development, which we have just recently started to work on with Chandra Prabhu, who's also present here. So I wanted to ensure that right in front of this discussion that I'm having with you, I'm able to communicate to you that how the ministry is actually undertaking real projects and delivering these real projects. And if you are able to see these projects together, you will see they all speak to that one very important cause, which is to ensure that Srila Prabhupada's books are read every single day by ISKCON devotees. With a quick briefing on what is being undertaken by the ministry now, I would like to share with you the first project that I talked about today, which is the International Shravanam Week. So this is the poster. As soon as we finish the symposium in the next 4 or 5 days, you will start receiving from the ministry many resources, many communication about the International Shravanam Week, which will happen right after the Bhadra Purnima festival. And it will be between 22nd to 28th of September 2021, a week dedicated to enhancing the culture of reading Srila Prabhupada books globally. We also have a small video, a promotional video, which I'm going to share with all of you now. And I pray to the Lord that I am able to play it in a way that you can all see it. So let's see. So this video that I'm sharing with you now is for the International Shravanam Week. Okay. Once again, it seems that technology has failed me at this point in time. I apologize. And the International Shravanam Week, we have many resources for devotees. So because I'm unable to play the promotional video as yet, probably by the time we finish the symposium, I'll have the opportunity. I will take this opportunity to share with you what do we have in our project on Books Are the Basis. So here we go. I hope that you're able to see the ministry website now on the screen. Can one of the organizers confirm to me?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay, thank you. So I mentioned to you that, and what you see here is what the ministry has done in order to create this transparency. Everybody at any point in time can go and look at these various initiatives that are being undertaken by the ministry. And under each initiative is a particular project. In some things, we've taken baby steps. In others, we have progressed well. So let's look at the Books Are the Basis project. Every single devotee who is present here, I am sure is inspired to read Srila Prabhupada's books. As part of this project, we have created and put together many resources. These resources can be used throughout the year, but they are to be specifically used also during the International Shravanam Week. You will notice here, first is a presentation which describes the purposes of this project. And it's a video that you can view at your leisure on this link that you see on your website. There's also a presentation that you can download and see and also share in your local communities. Obviously, our vision there is clearly to make Srila Prabhupada's books. Srila Prabhupada's books are the most widely read spiritual books in the world. That's the vision that the ministry has with respect to enhancing the culture of reading Prabhupada's books. We like them to be the most read books. We have also research. We have undertaken a research. You can download this, and this is available for everyone. These are personal instructions of Srila Prabhupada, 52 in number, with beautiful pictures. And each one of them is arranged in a chronological order, starting right from the early days. And I'm just going to adjust the screen so that you can see. For example, here, please try to understand our philosophy through various books that I've already published, and sometimes after, you'll have to carry out this order of discipline. Maharaj now, way back in 1969. These are available. You can all use them to inspire yourself and others to read Prabhupada's books every day. In our Ministry of Education YouTube channel, every single week, we publish an inspirational interview, an in-depth interview, short snippets of realization that are available. And there are now more than 6, I would say easily 50 plus in-depth interviews. There are close to 100 short inspirational videos, which you can use in your communities during the Shravanam week. We also undertook a fairly aggressive campaign last year, encouraging more and more devotees to conduct study groups and share with us where they're conducted, so that this information is available for everyone to join around the world at different time zone, different languages. We also collaborated with His Holiness Keshav Bharti Maharaj in creating a resource where you have the complete Bhagavad Gita as it is and the complete Srimad Bhagavatam, verse by verse, every translation with every purport read, and it's available as a resource. You can hear it, you can view it through our website and also through YouTube. I also attach the GBC resolution to this effect for celebrating the week. We're in the process of creating also a training with Vaisheshika Prabhu. We've also done a research and a guidebook where you can read and understand what are the challenges devotees typically face, how do you overcome those challenges, some case studies in different communities where book reading has become an integral part of it. For those of you who feel inspired to establish study groups, we also have presented a simple guide on how to establish these study groups, what principles to follow, thematic, sequential, systematic, like that, which is available also for all of you, like this. So this is just an example of one of the projects, which is the most important project for us. So you can go and visit our website. You can find out about our vision, mission, the team, which is working in the ministry, how to contact us, our regional representatives. In the basis, the very foundation of the ministry is based upon Srila Prabhupada's books and our philosophy of education papers. If you recall, on the first day, second session, I mentioned to you, there are 6 scholars, educators within ISKCON who we coordinate with, and their papers are published in this section. We are working very actively to release weekly newsletters. We have these Viplavah seminars for the last 3 years of symposium, 20-minute talks with at least 100 educators, different talks on different topics. We are working hard to create best practice case studies, which are in the process, and we publish a quarterly journal as well. You are welcome to also participate in our learning programs, which we are collaborating to create, and going back all the way to also an instructional design program that was created along with Urmila Mataji for many teachers. There is a Krishna conscious curriculum for children, so on and so forth. Now, one very important principle for the ministry is to allow devotees to interact, connect, network with each other. So we have a database of educators. I encourage that many more devotees who are participating here can input their information there. A database of educators, institute and programs that are going on. And we also have under the sharing section, once you've connected, once everybody's connected, there's an expectation they should share. So we've created a multimedia library where we already have about 1,000+ resources, which were from the 1970s, when Srila Prabhupada had his disciples run Gurukul, 17 and 80s, many disciples of Srila Prabhupada created resources, and those resources are digitally archived in our library. And we're working on standard development also. We are looking at establishing more projects. Your participation in the teams would be very helpful. And last but not the least, I'm giving you an example. Now with the Board of Examination, we're working to see how can we create a structure in a way where more information can be provided for the Board of Examination to devotees around the world. So dear devotees, I go back, I stop here, encourage you to look at our website. I stop here and go back to my presentation, which was focusing on transparency. So in the case of transparency, I mentioned to you, it's very important for the ministry, and I confirmed and I shared with you how at the ministry we're working on these areas, which I ran you through with our website, which is about us, how we are going to inform you all, what is the basis of our functioning, how you can learn with us, connect amongst each other, share resources, network, and develop. I'm going to pause because it's exactly the time where I must pause. If you feel inspired, then please come forward and participate with the ministry. You can write to our email address. You can also you can join our Telegram chat, which is dedicated for Books Are the Basis volunteers, our WhatsApp chat, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. You will receive from us an information bulletin practically every quarter, where we'll keep you informed of how and which direction the ministry is going. Okay, so I pause here, and I'll be happy to take any comments or questions that you may have with respect to the ministry. Any questions there may be?
Yeah, I think one question from Mitravinda, that thank you for all great service. Inside the Books at the Basis project is something developed oriented for children.
Yes, definitely. I said, in the development of our consciousness, most of us are like children, and at least I am. And if we're definitely trying to do that, you see, what we're able to do, our first focus is to inspire the leaders, the preachers of this movement, right? And amongst the leaders, preachers, and the educators, then our expectation is, then the individual educators will also create resources. In the previous presentation, I shared an example how one of the educators took the inspiration and created a resource, right? So we actually rely on individual educators to create these resources as well. So if any parents here, teachers here feel inspired to work in that direction, please let us know. We will organize. We had ambitious project last year, where I got together with several educators from Pune and a few other locations to request them to use the resources that we already have. So speaking directly to the children, there are two things that are easily available. Number one, if you go to the electronic library that we have, it has curriculum for children, going back on Srimad Bhagavatam, on Ramayana, etc. There are lesson plans there, so you can actually access that from the library. And I was very keen that as more resources are produced in different languages and by different educators, some educators in the ministry will help us organize age specific, that help us organize in such a way that they also become useful for age groups. You know, if it's kids, very small, Kishore, Yavanam, like that. Okay.
So one more question, Prabhu, just to because there are two more. So Gaur Chandra Prabhu is asking, is there any other devotees other than Mayapur? The MOE has offices outside or across India. Please state it.
We're lucky that we have an office in Mayapur now. That itself has taken us some efforts. Yes, we do have an office in Sridham, Mayapur. We are basically a virtual office. I mean, we have some resources, but please bear in mind, the ministry has a network of regional representatives, which we've been experimenting with for the last 1 or 2 years. And this year, again, I'm going to focus my energy in creating a clear service description, appoint regional representatives. But please remember that the ministry is going to work with the temples, with the centers, and with the congregations. We are not a separate entity. We work under the GBC body. We play the central role of creating projects, funding projects, bringing teams together. But we do not have any intention to establish offices in different countries. No, that must be done by individual educators and temples in different locations around the world. And that's the model we like to follow. There's one more question, last one, before I hand over to the next speaker. How the new project get approved if somebody has a novel idea? Well, we follow a process. We need to know the idea. We need to understand the team. We need to know how it will be developed. And if it fits within the remit of the ministry, then a lot of the projects that you see there are actually projects that we felt need to be done, and we reached out to several devotees, looked at what they were doing and established them. Okay, on that note, I'd like to invite now our next speaker, who has been an inspiration to me personally. And whatever I'm able to conduct now in the ministry, I owe to him, because he gave me the inspiration and he also gave me the autonomy to be able to develop this. So I invite His Grace Srila Prabhu to join us today for this last session, the concluding session of Viplavah 2021. Last year, we had the good fortune of having everybody's physical association. Now it's virtual. And I'm most grateful to Srila Prabhu. He's recovering from a health crisis, but he still obliged us to come and speak to us on a very, very beautiful topic, the rite of passage. So I invite Srila Prabhu to please lead us through that presentation.
Thank you very much, Tapan Mishra Prabhu. I hope everyone can hear me. I'm also technology challenged, as we experienced a little bit with Tapan Mishra Prabhu's presentation. But I assume you can hear me, so I'll go forward.
Yes, Prabhu, it's absolutely clear. Your voice is very clear, yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Tapan Mishra Prabhu and Balamardhan and all the devotees that work so hard to put on this conference. It's a tremendous opportunity to come together and hear devotees inspired by Prabhupada's message to enrich the lives of all the devotees of ISKCON through reading Srila Prabhupada's books and doing different teaching programs with Srila Prabhupada's books. Today, I thought I'd take advantage of my position as the last speaker to just offer some reflective thoughts about the state of ISKCON today and how the Ministry of Education, through its various programs, can be a tremendous asset for leading ISKCON from this point forward. I think we're all familiar with the analogy of Srila Prabhupada built a house that the whole world can live in. And indeed, the house of bhakti that he created is certainly capable of housing Vaishnavas from around the world. But of late, I've noticed the appearance of regionalism or other ways in which the ISKCON society is becoming stratified. And it impels me to take a look at the needs created. I just want to share my screen with you and go over some of the things which I think can be responses. Rites of passage, illustrated by Krishna Lila and Krishna's Gurukul Lila. I think that there's a great need to approach this problem of becoming regionalized or stratified by age, for instance, older devotees versus younger devotees. Anything that can divide us, I think, needs to be carefully dealt with by establishing a culture of common practices, common goals, aspirations, not only within ISKCON, but certainly that specifically, but in terms of all the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, different communities of devotees around the world, different yatras, families. I think there's a need to sort of unify and create a common culture among all those efforts so that the displacement or the movement away from one common culture doesn't continue. And I propose that that can best be done. Well, not best be done, I think that's a bit pretentious on myself. But I think one of the things that can be done or should be done are formalizing rites of passage in our ISKCON society. So what is a rite of passage? You see it defined on the screen, but basically it's a way in which our culture, any culture, can be perpetuated. There's always going to be changes in individual people's lives and in lives of the greater society around us. But what grounds us, or any society, and prevents movement from the core principles has to be countered, first of all, recognized, and then countered in such a way that this movement, that movement away from the house that Prabhupada built doesn't continue. Some idea of the type of challenges I'm speaking about. An individual searching for his identity in Srila Prabhupada's house. Paradoxes that arise from different practices that are adopted in the name of Srila Prabhupada's instructions around the world, changing dynamics of the society around us. Even, for instance, death. Death has often an effect on society that can be unsettling. And so the purpose of rites of passage are to stabilize the situation. And it does that in many different ways. So why are rites of passage important? I'll give you a personal example with regard to belonging. Rites of passage are ways in which our belonging to an institution, an organization, a family, a group, a yatra. One of the ways that is recognized or rites help is in terms of the sense of belonging. when I worked with the Vrindavan Gurukula many years ago, back in the 90s, one of the things that struck me when the first class that I was associated with graduated was that they were facing an uncertain future. Even though they were young people, just came out of one of our educational institutions, maybe the only educational institution we had at that time. They came out, but they faced this problem that there was no place for them to be integrated into society, into the ISKCON society. There was no service opportunities. There were no teaching opportunities. There were no puja or pujari opportunities for our own graduates to pass on to. And I realized at that point that feelings of abandonment or not belonging could easily arise amongst the devotees that came out of our own educational institutions. So rites of passage, they give us an opportunity to reinforce this idea of belonging to one common culture, one common organization like this. They build the faith and trust that's required for an organization to move forward. Move forward, for instance, and do all the wonderful programs which are being presented in this symposium. So another reason why rites of passage are important is they connect us with our past. And I think about my godbrothers and godsisters, particularly about this, because when we connect with our past, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going back to the 6 Goswamis and our previous acharyas, but connecting with our own devotees, elders, for instance. Maybe some of you are familiar with the Christian church. They have this idea of elders, where senior, experienced people in the congregation are given sort of a position to help train and guide newer devotees. I think we see this, and by the way, I don't want to say none of this is already not is going on in society. It is. For instance, in Chaupati, I know they have a very strong counselor system, which is the same idea of elders being honored so that the continuity of life flows in such a way that things remain together. So a role for elders, which is another way that some of the older devotees are exiting active involvement with ISKCON, even as they age, is because they feel there's no role for them. So connecting with the past is another reason why this is important. They place us in a sacred space. I, for one, and I agree, I can understand that people may object, but I think that the practice of rituals is very helpful for community development. Vaisheshika was talking about community development very eloquently a few minutes ago. Well, here I feel is another way to ensure community development. Here in Alachua, where I live, there are a group of boys that are taken by one of our community members, who himself is an older Gurukuli, and who dresses them very nicely in a very paka way, and they assist in doing the yajna at each of the major festivals. So these young boys are going through a ritualistic ceremony where their dress is important, the time and the place matter, but by doing this, they're going into a sacred space and they're developing bonds, community bonds, which will carry them throughout their lives. So sacred spaces are important for these rites of passage as well. And finally, in this section, making sense of change. Change is something that happens in our lives in many ways without us having any control. But we can take a proactive stance, as is being done by all the educational programs which have been spoken about here. We can take the positive approach and use change that is inevitable in such a way that it can benefit us. And so change rituals help us make sense of the change, and they offer us the opportunity of welcoming a new voice, for instance, welcoming a new voice of the new generation. Sometimes in management, we get kind of stuck and we don't hear people that are very dedicated, senior in themselves, and that they've been in the movement for 30 plus years. But we think, oh, they're young, they're the young generation. We, the older folks, have to make all the decisions. We're not ready for that change of having a new generation come in. So these are various reasons why I think the establishment of ritual rites of passage, and again, these things are being done in various ways. There are 40 some plus samskaras which are done in generally Hindu traditions, and so many of them are being practiced in ISKCON. But I think formalizing and putting sort of a stamp of approval on this type of a process, these rituals of passage, will help bind our communities in ways in which we need to take advantage of. So how does it work very quickly? How do rites of passage work? 3 phases, you see them there: separation, transition, incorporation. Separation basically means giving an opportunity or a chance, for instance, to a young person, your son or daughter, to act on their own. Not that everything has to be done for them at a certain point in life. They have to act on their own. And that's recognized through this separation aspect of a rite of passage. Transition means they may go through a personal test or challenge, being on their own for the first time or entering into a new situation. But that's okay. I mean, obviously, as long as it's done in a way that people aren't harmed or injured in any way. But some transition is made. It's a personal challenge. And then there's the reincorporation, or taking back, reintegrating those people who have crossed the passage, met the challenge, and bringing them into society where they can participate with new ideas and new enthusiasm. So these are three phases of rites of passage that I think are also beneficial and could be incorporated officially one way or another by our devotees in ISKCON. There's an example that involves Krishna's Leela of going to the Gurukula. And I just highlighted this so you can understand how these 3 steps are actually seen in the Lord's Leela. Prabhupada writes in the Krishna book about when Krishna, after killing Kamsa and the political situation being arranged in the king of Mathura, political questions were resolved. Then Krishna was given the Gayatri mantra, and at that point, Vasudeva sent him to Sandipani Muni's ashram. And so Prabhupada says it's customary after being initiated in the Gayatri mantra for one to live away from home for some time under the care of the Acharya. So even Krishna recognizes in his Leela, we can see this idea of how separation actually helps the maturation of the students, young people, from being a child to becoming a contributing member of the society. So separation and transition. I love this story. It tells about how Krishna and Sudama went out and got caught in the dust storm and the rainstorm, and they passed the whole night in that way in service. They met the test. by coming together and working together and giving each other shelter. It's interesting to note, if you see any paintings of this Leela, how Krishna is holding on to the wood he gathered throughout the whole stormy night. They did not give up the service of the Guru, even though they were faced with tribulations. They stayed together and held on to the wood so they could present it to their Guru for sacrifice. I thought that's a perfect example of how to meet the transition by being faithful to the Guru in spite of difficulties. And then finally, the final stage, the incorporation. After Krishna and Sudama passed this test, the Guru was very satisfied with them. And he blessed them in ways in which I've highlighted in the PowerPoint here. How they would take part and incorporate the experiences, the growth they had in the society, and not feel abandoned nor fail to take responsibility. When I was dealing with the problem in our community here in Alachua, for some time, I was talking with different devotees from the different sections of society. And I was very disheartened after speaking with one young man about the community problem. And he said to me that, well, that's your problem. That's your problem. That's not our problem. That's not my problem. In other words, that's ISKCON's problem, not my problem. I felt very hurt by that, because all the times I've been working in this movement, I felt that it's all of us all together. But then I realized there are sections of society who have become alienated some way or another, so that they don't see the society's problems as theirs. Or more importantly, probably, they don't see the skills and abilities that they have as being useful and willingly contributed to ISKCON. So not only do we have to go through changes, rites of passage, we change, we develop, but we also have to be reincorporated and remember and try to do our best to stay giving of our abilities, our talents in the service of Srila Prabhupada and ISKCON. So I think that if we give ourselves the opportunity to remain focused like this by highlighting different rites of passage, and they're going to come from many different places. Some will come obviously from educational programs that all of you are working so hard to contribute. They'll come from Brahmachari ashram, Grahastha ashram. They'll come from other ministries or activities that are being supported and promulgated by devotees of ISKCON. They'll come from a lot of different places. But if we can recognize them and formalize them in some way, I think it'll help the cohesion of the society. And of course, a lot of that comes from the educational endeavors that all of ISKCON is working to make important. I mean, it's not by mistake or happenstance that education was the first ministry that Srila Prabhupada established. He established it because, if I can dare say, being associated with the ministry for many years, it's the most important of the ministries. And one of its functions is to provide the rites of passage, as I've tried to introduce this morning. I haven't given any specific rites of passage because, as I say, they come from many different areas. But I hope you get the idea from this short presentation about how important formalizing rites of passage are, so our society progressively matures, and as we transit from young person to middle-aged person to old person, and then ultimately on to spiritual activities in another realm. So Tapa Mishra, I believe that's the sort of the reflective message that I wanted to give today. Thank you for organizing such a wonderful gathering of Vaishnava devotees around the world. And I will stop sharing my screen with that.
Thank you,
Hare
Prabhu.
Krishna.
Prabhu, you mentioned in your presentation, one of the key themes of rite of passage is for the elders to share reflections and thoughts with the next generation. That's precisely what you've done. You have now implanted in the ministry a very important thought, a seed about the rite of passage. I must admit, I feel overwhelmed just even thinking about what we may have to do to undertake this. But I seek the blessings, your blessings, and the blessings of the devotees here, that this may come true sooner than later, because it's so important. So, dear devotees, if you have any questions, then please address them now. We do have one hand up by one devotee in Russian. Perhaps somebody can translate that if it's a question. So on behalf of, yes, I think we have the question. So the question from Shivas Pandit Prabhu: are rites of passage synonymous with samskaras?
Basically, you can understand them like that, yes. And therefore, I mentioned Hindu tradition. I'm sure if we consulted Hari Bhakti Vilas, we could find Vaishnava traditions, samskaras also, which are equivalent. But we know things like Upanaya ceremony, which is not, in one sense, practiced in ISKCON the way it's practiced in general Hindu society. But there are many different samskaras, birth, even starting school. There's one where the child is, Prabhupada almost gives it when that picture of him in Dwarkadish where he's taking his hand and making the letters. But that's a samskar. So there are many that, again, have been practiced informally, but I'm advocating that they become formally part of ISKCON's efforts to remain together as a society.
Thank you, Prabhu. And if I may add, the one that comes very, very clearly in my mind is actually the samskar of initiation and the whole process around it, how Srila Prabhupada described it. And in some of the sampradayas, actually, they have a seal, heated up, silver seal, completely with heated up like fire. And then you actually get an impression in the Sri Sampradaya on both your hands of the 4 symbols of Lord Vishnu. But this is what I remember that Srila Prabhupada.
We're not advocating that.
We definitely not. For us, as we read in our paper, it's these, for the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, we have our impressions in the simple form of our tilaks over the 13 parts of the body.
Very important. We take them as the everyday practices, but accepting these Vaishnava samskaras, Vaishnava markings on the body, very important. Yeah. And we can't, those things hold us together as well as some of the other things I've tried indicating.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much, Shesha Prabhu. I also want to take the opportunity to inform everybody of that we will have the next Viplavah Symposium in less than 6 months, about 6 months' time. We hope to actually celebrate around Gaur Purnima festival next year. So that's when we'll be doing. I have figured some technology. So to be fair to my colleagues and devotees, our team who has been working on this presentation, I would like to share with everybody now the video that we have prepared to encourage everybody for the Shravanam week. So I'm sharing my screen now, requesting those who may be present to please let me know if you're able to see the screen.
Yes, Prabhu, you can see the screen, yeah.
Do you also hear it? Do you also hear it, Balimadan Prabhu?
Yes. Yeah.
Jai.
We turn to his books and associate with his books, as well as his recorded conversations too. I mean, we turn to his books and associate with his books.
Don't know, we lost the sound, looks like. Roji, I think we don't have the sound. Sorry to say what.
So we really encourage you all to read Srila Prabhupada's books, to dive deeper into the philosophy and the pastimes of Krishna and become cured of this material disease, the Bhava Road. Hare Krishna.
So we are now going to bring and conclude the symposium. And I want, first of all, thank you to all the participants. We've had close to 400 devotees who participated through the last 3 days. The 6 sessions that we conducted, different devotees came in to attend different sessions based upon the interest. And it was very inspiring for us. And I want to first thank all the participants. I also, without whom it would not be possible for us to have the symposium. I apologize to those participants who wanted to speak this time, but we were not able to accommodate because there were just so many speakers we can have in a 3-day symposium. But I'm hopeful that you will come back and participate with us in our next symposium scheduled around the Gaur Purnima festival. We will send out a call for participation for speakers around December of this year, December 2021. There are 2 possibilities. We may have it in person in Sridham Mayapur if the world returns to normal, like we've done in 2019 and 2020. So the fourth Viplavah could be in person, where we can also receive you nicely, host you, have prasad together as well. If that doesn't happen, then we'll have a virtual symposium going into Gaur Purnima. After the speakers, I'd like to thank our translators. Swarup Damodar Prabhu, Shyam Gopal Prabhu have spent a lot of time and energy in translating in Russian. So thank you. Thank you so very much. It's possibly the hardest service when you have to hear attentively non-stop and translate in a language without losing flow. And this symposium would not have been possible without the service of 3 devotees who are here with me. And first, my big thank you goes out on behalf of everyone to Balimardan Prabhu, who has played a very, very vital role on the technology side in many ways in helping us putting together this Viplavah symposium. Balimardan Prabhu, thank you. My obeisances to you for your service. And two young second generation devotees, Abhay Charan Prabhu, who's part of our office in the ministry. He's also our manager for the ministry, Office for Communications. If you write to Viplavah.iscon, he's the one you're writing to. He's worked tirelessly as well at handling all the communication, reaching out, last minute running around. And also Tamal Krishna Prabhu. And Tamal Prabhu has also joined us on the technology front. He's helped. Tamal Prabhu took a vaccine just a few days ago. He was feverish. Abhay Prabhu had to go and sort out his visa in Calcutta on Thursday. But still, every morning, 5 a.m., they would reach early morning to another location in Sridham Mayapur in complete darkness just to get access to a place where they can have internet. So very grateful. It was a pleasure to serve with all of you. And I hope and pray that we'll have your association again. If you feel inspired by what the ministry is doing, please come forward and volunteer. Volunteer, there's much to be performed. We just heard from Sesha Prabhu, there's so much more to be done in the future. So thank you. And with that, I would like Vaishnavas first, Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha, Kripa Sindhubheva Patitanam Pavnebhyo, Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha. And I'll also like to recite and offer our obeisances to His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada, under whose shelter the International Society of Krishna Consciousness, and as Shesha Prabhu said, Srila Prabhupada established this as the first ministry, and we are just trying to fulfill his order. So Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutle Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschat Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaur Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna,
Krishna
Hare
Krishna
Hare,
Hare
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 Ram,
Hare Ram,
Hare
Ram
Hare.
Ram.
Many devotees ask where to get the recordings. So yes, live on the ministry YouTube. In a few minutes, if you can't see them, we will make them public. We'll create a playlist for just the raw recordings, so they'll be available in the interim. Of course, then some of these recordings will have to be edited because there are some technical glitches here and there. They will be edited in the future, also be available. So in a day or so, we'll have the playlist, which you can access on the ministry YouTube website, where these recordings, the sessions, 2-hour sessions, will be available for you. And we'll keep you informed through our Telegram channel of how we, when other things are ready. And please join us, support us for the International Shravanam Week. It's a grass. Parimardhan Prabhu, we are now going to formally close the symposium.
Yes,
Hare Krishna.
the
Viplavah
Viplavah 2021 is done. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Parimardhan Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you. So the webinar will be closed now. Thank you, everyone.